Human consciousness, like everything else, is constructed for a particular purpose, but it is the only operation which engages in activities, even though specifically intended to aid in the realization of its aim, which instead interferes with and assures that it will not be achieved. One man would talk to himself for hours on end. But to what end? He finally asked himself. Words do not always reveal what men imagine. The mind loves that which it perceives as living and tries to grasp it into a state of permanency, which is possible only with the dead. The seamless consciousness of the awakened is not so limited, and freed from such mental distinctions can continue to cherish that departed as though it were still here. Words may not reveal what a man may really feel. A younger monk approached the elder of the school and said, "I don't mean to be offensive, but I've been thinking about something." And the old one immediately sliced the air with his hand and said, "You've said enough. I'm offended already." You do me proud. I didn't know whether that one would actually work off the paper or not. For the hearing of the alert, the end of all mystical speculation. There is one simple cause of what men have forever been wont to call human misery, and it is simply man's normal, healthy, continuing, unfinished condition. And just think about it, thought a man. Unwittingly, we cry out, "Oh, miserable am I. I am normal and healthy." And for the ears of the quick, the final explanation regarding the purpose of that thing up in the top of your head. The mind's responsibility is to keep life from taking its normal course. Come to think on it, thought a man, a mystic is not supporting man's nominally normal and healthy condition. The speaker proclaimed, "Attention, everything you've heard is true." And someone from the audience stood and asked, "Do you mean selectively?" And the speaker replied, "What other way is there?" To engage and rely on thought as opposed to seamless consciousness is to abandon your greater potential. The path, the journey, the way. The life of each man is a path he walks. The path of a mystic is one within. The life of each man is a river he rides. The trip of the mystic is the ride within him. The life of each man accords with the way, and none but the silent walk it in peace. Conversation snippet overheard at local bus stop. "Hey, did you hear they've legalized cannibalism?" "Are you kidding me?" "No, they call it culture. You know, art and literature and that kind of stuff." And from a passing museum came the sound of a muffled burp. To comment is to oppose, and to oppose is to decline the offer, to be more conscious. And a certain man pondered, would people react more favorably if the offer was to be more conscious rather than to become more conscious? But see, he misses the immediate, always present point, that there is no becoming. No future state at which one can become more conscious. There is only the present, continual possibility to do it, to be it. One day, in a casual moment, Buddha turned to a kid who had been hanging around for a while and said, "If anyone ever tells you that it's not a forever ongoing struggle, they're lying to you." Transcript of a certain address given and subsequent audience participation. In the uniquely human realm, above the level of mere survival, there are but two professions possible, that of repairman and of entertainer. And someone in the crowd, seeking specific clarification, asked, "How about dentist?" Repairman. Then someone else inquired, "Well, what about philosophers?" Entertainers. And a third person joined in, inquiring about priests, also entertainers. Then someone placed into play the name, the profession, psychiatrist. Well, they can actually come in either variety of repairmen or entertainers. After that, there was a lull for a bit until someone in the rear stood and asked, "Then what about mystics?" Ah, a singular endeavor worthy of man's uniqueness, for a mystic is both simultaneously. Tip regarding how to be sure you won't ever be some particular something, some particular thing. Publicly announce that that's what you fully intend to become. A giraffe said to a camel, "You know, it's weird. For as out of the ordinary as even we look, you still can't make fun of anything to the same degree as you can man." One man let the air out of his tires, the anger out of his laughter, the thoughts out of his compassion, and the interruptions out of his consciousness. And now, a visit to the world of neural haberdashery, wherein the topmost part of common man is fitted and outfitted. Imagery, nay, makes the man. Imagery is the man. During a certain time, a warrior stopped and thought. In that the true measure of intelligence is in the ability to adapt, why engage in any direct opposition to the ever-changing circumstances that is the face life presents to man? The local street corner poet offered his latest to the passers-by. All of the heroes are dead, and all the smart guys are gone. And someone stopped long enough to ask if that included him, which spurred him on to even greater heights of whatever it is he's doing. The patriarch of the family-owned consciousness business gave this direction to his eldest son and heir. If, for some reason, you do have to think, pay somebody to do it for you. And the boy was already bright enough to understand that not all potential salaried employees are external. Instant postscript, cheap labor is, if nothing else, cheap. The road of ever-increasing understanding leading to the land of enlightenment is like the skin of an onion. Behind every layer is always another layer, except when there's not. The loudest noise in the universe, so all-pervasive, in fact, that normal ears don't even hear it, is the sound of life itself continually asking man the rhetorical question, well, what do you think? And the poor dears continue to reply. Approximately 3 out of every 4 words is editorial comment. A mystical system that teaches you how you should behave does not understand the basis of human behavior. One man said he was recently struck with the realization that the reason reporters, observers, and commentators speak so constantly in worn cliches is that there's never much of anything new going on to take note of. The neural dance of the mystic. Movement is intelligence. Interruption, stupidity. One way to tell that a people have become truly civilized is they will no longer call the stupid, stupid. Oh, and also you can tell a man is more conscious if he doesn't even think about it. The most popular form of popular entertainment is popular talk. When the warrior reaches the new land, his first act is to shed his subconscious mind. And note, all mind is subconscious. Only consciousness is conscious. Only consciousness without stipulations. After diverse involvement with apparent mystical teachers, all of which proved ultimately unsatisfying, a man suddenly suspected the way you could recognize a really more awakened man would be that he would demand a totally unreasonable sum of money to talk to you about it, since he alone would realize the price he'd have to pay to do so. Cheap labor is, if nothing else, cheap. Maybe I should rewrite it. Cheap labor is, if nothing else, affordable. Consciousness has a rhythm and thought a tempo. But why confuse sunsets with the sky? You can engage in all of the study and preparation to awaken that you want to, but it won't do you any good. But then again, if you don't do it, you don't have a chance either. The moment's always here and always slipping by, never to return till you're conscious that it can. Picture, if you would, I'm going to use religion because we don't have mystics constantly on television. But picture preachers like you would find on a Sunday morning. Picture you turn on your television, and further picture that religion, preachers, no matter what low level it may be, no matter how watered down, it is still an attempted form like everything else in man's world of the intellect, is in some fashion an attempt to be more conscious. So just take it in that manner, that preachers as little understanding as anyone involved in religion has as to what the real purpose is. But imagine, since we don't have mystics on TV, that just go ahead along with it, that is what they're up to, doing their best. So imagine you get up on a Sunday morning and turn on your television with the sound off, and you flip through the channels. And I guess according to the size of the city where you reside, but they're numerous, one after the other. You can see them there, you know exactly who they are, there's no doubt, and there they are with the sound off. But now take what I gave you as the preface, that they are engaged as best as possible, not just the individuals, but the whole public phenomenon of religion is life's general, most accessible variation, reflection, possibility of a person being more conscious. So take that as the preface, as the given, and then there you sit with your remote and you start flipping through. All different looks of the edifice from whence it is being broadcast, different size guys dressed in different suits. But there they are. Flip, flip, flip. Some of them walking, they're waving books. They're engaged as best as possible at the public level. As far as life will allow them, as much as life has revealed to them, which you understand I'm being charitable, which is actually nil, but I'm just saying as much as it has. They are would-be mystics. And yet I tell you, let me reread page 1. Human consciousness, like everything else, is constructed for a particular reason. But it is the only operation which engages in activities, even those specifically intended to aid in the realization of the aim. Even those activities. Religion. It's the only operation that will engage in activities specifically intended to fulfill, to realize the aim, but which instead interferes with, assures that it will never be achieved. So there you are, flipping through the channels, following my presentation of it, and here are these various people doing the best they can, probably at any given time the best that life has publicly, generally available. And they're exhorting, well, you could guess by looking at them, to be a Presbyterian, be a Christian, be a Jew, be a Catholic. And if you took this, or if I went ahead and tell you now specifically, I just tell you that there it is. At a public level, life is offering the best information possible. Offering as much as it wants people to ordinarily have. It is offering mystical information. And if you sit there and if you turn on the sound and you listen to what they were saying, and I'm already telling you in advance, we're already operating on the basis that that is their purpose. No matter what they call it, that is the purpose. That is the profession they're fulfilling, the job they're fulfilling for life. If you sit there and listen to it, especially take it seriously, try and in some way let it affect you, try and make it part of your nervous system. That is, if you succeed at all and believe, well, I got something out of listening to that, it is a further denial, it is a further nail into the coffin of any possibility. That by listening to the best that life has to offer, if you listen and go, yes, yes, it is actually no, no, no. That if you listen to the general information available as to how to be a better person, and there was any potential for you to ever amount to anything inside of yourself, by following the very instructions, by following the very information publicly available, it would do the opposite. It should be of some interest to you to consider, and by television and watching channels, you also understand this applies to your own network internally. But if I was presenting this to a fairly ordinary person, and they took some philosophical interest in it thus far, the attitude would be that I must be more specific, that I could be correct in saying that if you attempted to follow their ideas and their teaching to try and become a better person, trying to become more conscious, if I could get my fictitious ordinary person I'm talking to, if I described to them very quickly that the whole idea of being a real Christian or Jew or Buddhist or Hindu is to be a better person. They go, yeah, yeah. And I say, but it's actually more to be a better person. Wouldn't you agree that there must be something a little allegorical behind the idea of be a better person on the basis of do charity, pray to Allah, visit Mecca, light candles, do whatever the rituals are? Wouldn't you agree that somewhere in there is something that's non-physical? There's an appeal somewhere. They'd probably like the word spirit. And I'd say to the spirit, to be a better person internally, not just do better works, not just appear to be a more charitable, humane person. And they would go, well, yeah. And I say, all right, could we just call it be more conscious? Just, would you let me go with that? And they'd probably go, okay. And then I say, well, here it is. This is what's publicly available. And we turn on my TV set on Sunday morning, and I say, now flip through it with the sounds off. And they flip through. I say, it looks like a wide range. Yes, yes, yes. And I say, but you realize if you picked out any one of them and you attempted to really pursue that, and that your aim was, your personal aim was, I want to be more conscious. I want to be enlightened. If I could slip in I want to be illuminated. I want to have the experience. And if that was the best available, somewhere in there, and he goes, yeah. If you picked out the best one and you gave it your best effort and had some success in following what they're teaching, yeah, it'd keep you from it. Then this person, even if they'd gone along with this far, they would, if I paused, they'd say, well, wait. Now, you could be correct, selectively. And there's where Brutus almost circumcised himself while taking... It's where you can come up short. You can think too fast and, just zip up the mind and go, ooh. Well, ordinary people do not notice that much because their mind is so scarred now that they're sort of immune to it. The thing is, if an ordinary, good, sane, sophisticated person was following what I'm saying, you do understand they would say that, let us say that we could pick up 20 or 50 preachers on a Saturday morning. We had that many channels. And they'd say, well, now you could be right. Now, some of these people, I can just look at them with a sound off. Some of them look like they're maniacs. Or, of course, the obvious thing being that whoever the person is I'm talking to, they could probably identify, just from the looks of it, a Presbyterian church or a Baptist church. If they were, and they would obviously recognize if they were picking up something from a mosque, and let's say that they were Jewish and they saw this going on, they realized, well, that is some kind of Muslim service, and they would certainly say, well, no, you're not going to get anything from that. Or a Southern Baptist or a Baptist would say if he saw a Catholic, he could spot a Catholic priest, he'd go, well, you're right. But now it's more subtle than that. You understand? I'm just throwing in the obvious one of the so-called common prejudices that people have against other religions. But if this person was not even strongly religious in any particular denomination, they would still want me to clarify, or they would insist that I might be generally on to a reasonable observation, but I would have to be more specific. That there would be, at least they would insist, with their varying degrees. Now, it's according to how enlightened or how modern the particular religion is. We can't tell. Some of these people, maybe an Episcopal, if they identified an Episcopal or an Anglican, taking a Western view, they might go, and now you'd get closer probably. Or maybe it looked like even a Buddhist, if they were probably in some cities, but now they have Buddhist service on Sunday morning. And according to how, this is neither here nor there, you understand, I'm just trying to make an example, but according to how, at least literarily, sophisticated the guy was I'm talking to, he might go, well, now wait a minute. You're saying that if you followed anybody's teaching, any of the ones that we flipped through, any of these 50, you're saying that if you actually followed what they were doing and began to succeed in what they were promoting, what they were encouraging you to do, that it would actually stop you from being more conscious. And I go, yeah. They go, well, wait a minute. Now, I would agree, I can look at some of these guys, and if you'd let me turn the sound maybe, but I can tell just from looking that some of these people, you can look how crude it is. And you can tell it's, well, look at the cheap suit he's got on, his hair, he's waving a Bible. I know what that kind of fundamental stuff is. And that's not going to lead anywhere. All they're doing is condemning sex and booze and et cetera, and probably soliciting money half the time. So I'll agree to that. But now you cannot make a blanket statement at all of it, because how about, let's flip back to that channel. That guy looks like, from the trappings there, I bet that's some kind of, probably a Buddhist church from California somewhere that we're watching. And relatively speaking, if you followed their teaching, I'm not an expert, the guy might say, but I've read some, you would be better off. You'd come closer to what you're calling enlightenment or doing something with yourself personally. You would do better to follow that now, I agree, than you would that guy back on that other channel that's obviously some fundamentalist Christian of some sort. Nuh-uh. There's no selectivity. There's no relativity to it. And that throws not only people publicly, which is not the point of me bringing it up, but it throws people internally with themselves. Because your mind has to select. And if you're not sitting looking at television, or another version, if you're not sitting with a stack of books, you've got a book over here on some of the Sufi poets, and you've got a book on some of the Tibetan ideas of the liberation of the mind. You've got some over here of Zen and all sorts, and you read here and there and you think about it. And probably comes and goes, if those of you that went through long periods of such as that you think, wait a minute, I believe this guy was it. Maybe you found a new translation or a publication of some 12th century Sufi poet, or you find something that's purported to be the writings of some unknown, heretofore unknown little Zen student from the 1600s. But you read something and you think, boy, they're onto it. That is it. And I know how you can cherish it and just carry it around. And you think, I'm onto it. If you succeed, and success is obviously in itself a relative term, but if you become won over, if you think, well, I'm getting it, on the basis that it is some theory, that it is some teaching, and that you're studying for it. Yeah, but somebody in the crowd has got to stand up and say, wait a minute, you mean selectively? That's the only sane thing to say. That is the only sane response. I'm mixing up 2 or 3 of my news items in case you think your mind is slipping within 30 minutes. That one guy stood up, the speaker said, attention, everything you have ever heard is true. I could have said it's incorrect, but I like this version. I wrote it. He announces, attention, attention, everything you have ever heard is true. And someone stood and said, you mean that selectively? He said, there's some other way. And the one that points out that you can study and you can prepare to be enlightened, to be awakened. You can do it all you want to, and it won't do you any good. But if you don't do it, you haven't got a chance. See, it is back. You're left mentally. We're not talking physically. And that's also, I threw in the one that said that a mystical system that wants to teach you about behavior, wants to affect behavior. I could have put it several ways. I did it as blunt as I could, but any mystical system that deals in behavior has no idea, whoever it is, but the system does not, the person does not. If they're dealing in behavior, they have not any clue as to the source of human behavior, which is simply say they've got no idea at all what's going on in life. But notice, we're back to, if there's some description of man, it is a piece of unfinished business. That's the only thing, we can call it the mind, but it is, operationally speaking, the definitive difference between man and anyone else. That hippos are hippos, rabbits are rabbits, even elm trees. They all measure up. If you're an elm tree, you're an elm tree. I mean, there's not much else you can say. You don't have to study. You're certainly not open to condemnation or guilt for somebody to come by, some human, even somebody with a degree in forestry, if there is such, to go by an elm tree and say, I've seen some sorry elm trees, but boy, you take the cake. There are no graduations. There is no selectivity in whether you are an elm tree or not. You simply are or you're not. With humans, though, every human is subject for you to walk by, whether you've got a degree in forestry or not. And you go past a human, get them above the age, let's say around 12. Everybody likes that. But from that age on, you walk past any human and go, I've seen a lot of kids in my life. I've seen a lot of humans in my life, and I've seen some sorry ones. Well, I thought I had until you. And every human on this planet will become engaged in sphincter retention. That's right. You are simply, at any ordinary level, if you are an ordinary sane person, that is an intellect operating at street level, wherever you are, you cannot defend yourself against any accusation or just a statement. Somebody says, well, you sure are talented and you are multi-talented. I know about you and how successful you are, but no offense, but I don't think you're perfect. Any sane person going to say, well, I know I'm not perfect. There you are. the point I'm trying to get us to jump from again is that everyone intellectually, not physically, but intellectually is the source of it, knows that they're incomplete. Or as the way they like it, they're full of misery. They're full of shortcomings. They're full of great holes in their development. But then they look for specifics. So as long as you are human and sane and you know you're unfinished, then you are immediately attuned to hearing the cry of the mystical wolf, or of any sort of wolf, staying out there waving the lantern, hollering, "Now leaving on track 17." And you'll immediately hear it because, and you're inclined to, well, where are you going? Because you know you should be somewhere. Everyone does. It just hollers, the bus station is now open. Buses are beginning to run shortly. Anyone who is interested in going anywhere, and every sane person on this planet in that bus station, every sane person will go, okay, and listen. Because they're saying, well, anyone who is not absolutely perfect, here's your chance. And everybody goes, well, yes. So it says, the bus station is now open, buses will be running. So if you're sane, you are open to some suggestion, some direction. You want to go. But then the question is, where? That is when you must have an apparent doctrine, when you must have an apparent schedule, you must have an apparent destination. That is when consciousness itself, that the very thing that is attempting to reach a certain kind of fulfillment by its own operations, denies it. That is, if it succeeds, if consciousness gets down to the mental level, which it has to even become conscious, and then pursues some course, well, all right, here's where we're going. You are sane enough already. You are alert enough to know that you need to make some changes, that is, go somewhere. And you go, oh, yeah. What do you mean, do I? I've been looking. I spent half my life on drugs and books and chasing things. Yes, I do. And it says, well, good. You know, shows how sharp you are. So are you ready for some good instructions, the real ones? You go, well, certainly, certainly. If you pursue it, you're not going anywhere. If you pursue it, what will keep you from doing is being so upset. So now, back to me pointing out the easy, or the simpler way to start the discussion again, that one point, is the difficulty. Think about it publicly. That you try to say, here's the secret system brought up to date that all of you would be mystics are interested in. And you go, yay! It's according to how long I could stand and go through all this, and finally somebody would have to say, well, you know, what is the secret? And it's obvious. You know, I'd have to tell you. All right, I will. So I go, well, it's good you're here because I know. And I know it in a modern, well, anyway, I know the secret, the history, I know it. And, you know, if that's what you're interested in, I know it. So we'll assume that I stand here for a while and you sit there for a while, hours, days, whatever it takes. And finally, we'll assume someone in a spirit of good-natured inquiry and curiosity, finally somebody raised their hand, and I go, yes. You know, a question. And they go, well, what is the secret? And I'd have to go, well, hell, I can't tell you that. It wouldn't be a secret. Now, think if, in fact, I tried, or if anybody who knew what they were doing tried to pull that. Do we have to sit around and speculate on what degree of public success that we could expect? I'd be lucky to get out without 2 or 3 fist fights. You know that there's no way to go with that. None. Somebody could. There could be, if I had hundreds of thousands of people, if they heard that sort of presentation, you would probably by now have enough who had read Zen to make it simple. They would go, oh, I'll wait. It's some sort of trick. I mean, I'm used to, I've read stuff like that. And so they might hang around for a while. You know, another couple of hours while everybody else began to mumble and leave and wish they'd paid to get in so they could get their money back. And they'd leave, but there might be a few that go, all right, it's a trick. I mean, I'm familiar with that kind of thing. I'll wait it out. But you understand that you're not a lot better off on that basis, because you still think, well, even though you said you can't tell because then it wouldn't be a secret, that's a lead up to something. You just want to get rid of the people who are not totally committed and interested in this. But I'll wait it out. I'll show you I'm interested. Now could we leave the world, a make-believe world of me or someone doing this to a crowd of people, and consider everything you have ever thought about it? Everything you've ever read, everything you ever heard, whether it was apparently from preachers or rabbis, philosophers, or the public mystics, it is always tied, inseparably tied to behavior. Because what else are they going to do when they call out the bus? Somebody says, well, here it is. Some group, somebody stands up and says, I know the secret. I am a wide awake. I'm on a mystical Sufi scale known only to a few people in the hills of the Himalayas and Beverly. I am, by that great unknown mystical scale, I am man number 27, blue. At any rate, I'm not. It's enough that impresses you. That there's nothing else better going on, and you show up and go, well, all right, what is it? What are they going to tell you? And I don't have to sit here and make them up and make it sound silly. That's not the point, to make a joke out of it. But what is all religion? As far as there being any spiritual, that is, internal, personal reality to it, it is minimal. And as always, charitable be my middle name. It is minimal. But does it bother anyone? And mysticism. People who, still the idea, again, not to make fun of it because I understand it, but for people who believe, well, if I could just arrange my life and save my money and move to India or to Tibet or where they believe it is now and get there. If you got somewhere and it sounded like this is the bus station, you know how you're going to get in? Well, let's assume, forget all that. Assume they say, all right, come on in. It's no big secret. You've been reading it all your life and you just don't even notice it. If you found a place and you said, I hear that this is where these secret guys right now, the most awake people on this planet, I've been reading, I put it together. I've read several books here and there, and I read such and such guy, and I read this and that, and I pieced it together. I believe it was some sort of puzzle. I believe it was a kind of, I had to put the key together, and I believe it brought me right here to you guys. Like they're going to deny it, even if they never heard of it, and they realize you've traveled all over the world and you've been putting together, you've been retranslating some sort of Chinese teacher's writings from 1372, and you've learned how to put a new code to it and turn it backwards and read it through a mirror. And it turned into a map, and it brought you right to this place, this specific place that's just right outside Rangoon. And sure enough, you'll find a monastery there somewhere, and you find it and you go, I hadn't read this anywhere else, but it just, something brought me here, that you are the guys. Right now, you are the center of all the known conscious effort on this planet. They're going to deny it? Yeah, right. They let you in. Come in. Good that you found us. What are they going to tell you? What, if you saw it, what did I do? Here I am, I've sold everything, I've ruined my health, I'm here, but thank God it was worth it. It's obvious it's worth it. Now what do I do? What are they going to tell you? They're going to give you something to do. But your mind says, well, if I went to all that trouble and I ended up in the company of such mystical people, it'd be something better than I ever heard before. Really? You know, where'd you grow up? Well, I was a Catholic. You didn't have plenty of things to do when you went to church? Well, yeah, but it didn't get me anywhere. You just kept doing them, and there was supposed to have been some sort of mystical reality behind it. Nothing ever happened. But now I'm getting somewhere. Well, think what a bummer it'd be if a Catholic ends up over there and one of the main jobs they give me is lighting candles inside the monastery every morning. And then 2 hours later he has to go put them all out, and then 2 hours later relight them all. As they give him this, the world's largest ball of twine, and these little bitty pebbles with a little stick, and they say you're going to have to start to stick holes in these little pebbles and then start stringing them on that big ball of twine as big as a Volkswagen. How long would it take the man to begin to sense any similarity between that and being a Catholic? I don't know. But it's not a joke. What else are they going to tell you? And I don't mean that they know better, but what did you expect? Now, the closest they get, that is the closest that life lets the information out, the closest it gets to any potentially unsettling potential, is simply the information that is fairly common, especially in, I say the East, it's not that important, it's just that they're the only one with the historical tradition of a public nature of this kind of activity. That it is fairly common for them to state that here are the rituals. Buddha's, that form being the easiest to describe again, that here's what dear Buddha and all the ones that came after, here's what they did, here's what they said do. And they could even stop you before you bother to ask. They say, now don't even bother to ask how long this is going to take. Says the head of the monastery. He says, I've been doing it for 25 years. I've been doing it for 40 years, so don't ask me how long it's going to take. I'm still working on it. Give me a break. I can't make you any promise. You can stay here if you want to or not. That comes about as close intellectually, verbally, as being an objective admission of reality. But as always, any comment is still a rejection. It is still opposition. Because that still gives you an idea, well, there's somewhere to go. And they're saying, well, I've been trying to go there for 40 years, and I've been following faithfully the teachings of so-and-so. So have all of us here. And we're doing it, we're doing the best we can. And it's always, if there's been any history to this particular school or group of people, they've been around for a while, there's also other behavioral restrictions to such a degree that they do feel better. Such as very likely they have a minimal of talk, absolutely no hostility allowed. They just simply not allow. You can't turn around to one of the other monks and grab his cup or hit him or push him out of the way. I mean, you understand that. And all it is sort of a closed environment of making people behave in an ultra-civil manner. But insofar as it actually changing one's understanding, the best they would do, the best that life will let them do, which is still captious, is the head guy admit, nah, hey, I hadn't had it yet. But what is she going to do? It's the best mouth we got, we just know it is. We just know this is what Buddha, this is what prophet so-and-so, or this is what mystic so-and-so, it's what he did. I mean, he wouldn't lie to us. This is what he said do, and we're doing it. I can't make you any promises, kid. You can stay here if you want to. If you do, you got to go by the rules, and you're in the same boat with the rest of us. You still believe that it's possible to move. You've got no choice mentally. Remember, all this is mental, because it is only the simple, it is only the ultimately totally irrelevant level of behavior of pursuing rituals. It can feel satisfying, and it makes somebody feel like I'm going somewhere. That's like being on a bus, and you continually get up and switch seats, or you open the window and then you close the window, and then you turn sideways, or you actually got a pillow. Then you turn this way in your seat and you turn that way. And it seems as though you're doing something, especially if it seems to be somewhat impertinent, unnecessary, that even while you're on the bus, every now and then they say, twice every hour, you should sort of bow your head and try to roll your eyes, close them, and try to roll your eyeballs back in your head and see if you can't get a sensation of some light. And think how easy it is that you could have a stroke and die right that minute. And it seems like you're doing something. You can prepare and you can study to be awake all you want to, and it won't do a damn bit of good. But if you don't do it, if you don't try it, you still haven't got a chance. I refer you back to my story now. Turn on TV, imagine. Now I've done all this. Can you imagine if we had a super, hyper, temporal network to which we had access. That you could start flipping channels and you could see Buddha and Confucius and Lao and Zoroaster. You could see everybody, and there they were, with no sound. But let's just say that you had seen enough drawings, or just imagine, just almost a mystical message. I started flipping through it, and you went, my God, that's Buddha. And I flipped through another one, that's Jesus, there's Abraham. And I said, okay, and I flipped through them all, and you go, how did you do that? Oh, you know, I got connections. I go, what? And before you could pick out the ones, you know, turn the sound up. You know, I'll give you anything for that remote or this TV. I go, wait a minute. Do you realize, here they are. And if we turn up the sound, I'm telling you beforehand, every one of those people, if you listen to what they're saying right now, what they're teaching, what they're promoting, what they're describing, what they're teaching, let's just leave it at that, what they're telling you. And now we're past the point of preachers, just common religion. Here it is, we've got Buddha in person to tell you exactly what it is. And I tell the person, I say, if we turn up that sound, I'm telling you right now, if you listen to that and you pursue it, it'll stop you from being enlightened. If we turn on some great Sufi, Rumi or somebody, and they're talking about illumination or and I say, you listen to that, and you begin to understand, if he makes it clear, because I know, you know, some of his poetry and writing sounds too allegorical. You're not, it's ambiguous. Here he is. But I'm telling you, if we turn up the sound, if you listen to it, it'll stop you from the awakening. If you listen to it and begin to get it, it'll stop you. Think what that would do. Think how that would go over. We're not talking about other people. I'm not picking on anybody. Think about you. Think about the mind, because that's all we're talking about. And you tell the mind, if you pursue any course, if you prepare and you really study, and you can feel like, well, I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer. Well, how do you know? Well, I've read more books. I'm getting closer. There is no closeness. You can't get closer. I know. Yeah. We could make another sermon out of that, but I have indirectly 1,000 times already. You can't really get closer. It kind of is a form of hyperventilated spatial, another spatial reality, not just a hyper-temporal one, in that you can't get any closer, but you can almost get further away. All right, by being a Christian, by reading some book, you won't be any closer to being awake. By trying to do good works, by trying to be charitable to other people, you won't get any closer to being awake, but in a sense, if you go out and you're aggressive with people and you're hostile with people, you can almost get further away. Just know one of the beauties of being a human. Consider one more time the possibilities, because this is not, or should not be seen as any sort of negative observation. That no matter what you do, you can study, you can prepare all you want to, and it won't do you a bit of good. You won't get any closer. That there's no becoming more conscious. You either are or you're not. I always like to do that as somebody thoughtfully considering that. All right, I'm going back to talking now. Okay, I'm back with you. There is no becoming enlightened. There is no becoming awake. And to pursue, now forget about some external, forget about a system, Zen or Sufism or anything. Forget about other people. Your own mind telling you that I'm on the right course. I am studying, I'm preparing. And you begin to believe it. Well, you just simply accept it. Well, because it's got to be true. It's either that, or your mind tells you, if it even had to analyze it this far, which it doesn't even like to do. If you notice, at times you don't even like to hear me do it. It makes your mind go, good God. That your mind's view is, this is either allegorical, it's depressing, it's just not true. Or what else could it be? You can't study. You can't become more conscious. You can't prepare for it. You do not become enlightened. Every time you think you're back in the process, to be charitable a third time, you're back in the process of attempting to become. That's why I'm doing this a little bit for. I'm being somebody else. All you got to do is think about it. And you're back in the process of attempting to become. But the mind wants to say, no, wait a minute. In the same way it does my many channels of watching the preachers. And it says, well, wait a minute. Think about what? You got to be more specific. You can't just say that every time you think about it, you can't become more conscious. Think about what? And I could be thinking more favorable ideas, that is more mystical type ideas, or less mystical type ideas. So which ones are you talking about? Yes, exactly. Oh, it's one of those Zen things again. If I'm giving a fair detailing, I noticed it didn't hurt anybody the last time we met. I said it outright. It just seemed to play like little chunks of fatty pork with wings. Insofar as the illustrative or notorious digestive system of honkers. But every time you think, let's use the terms that the whole point is to awaken oneself to another state of consciousness, that old one, and being asleep. Every time you think, you've put yourself to sleep. And a very sincere mystical seeker goes, well, you know, elaborate. I mean, because I obviously don't mean that. Every time you think what? Every time you think, you have put yourself to sleep. At first blush, and I assume not everybody will take that kind of terminology, if it's being normal and you're trying to be enlightened, trying to illuminate consciousness, whatever, but awake and asleep is nice, diametrically opposed verbiage. That's why it's been so popular. But to say, if you're thinking, every time you think, you have put yourself back to sleep. I don't care what sort of rituals you've been doing. I don't care how long you've been involved with this kind of great effort. Every time you think, you have put yourself back to sleep. And you think. Or you want to ask. If you're telling me the truth, you want to say, think what? Be more specific. And if I insisted, no, there is no specific. It's the same as all those preachers. It doesn't matter which channel. When I said that if you listen to any of those and you took it seriously and actually started succeeding and following and becoming a Christian or a Jew or a Buddhist, it would stop you from awakening. No. They won't say, which ones? Which ones are you talking about? It can't be all of them. It's all of them. And then to say, every time you think, you have put yourself back to sleep. No. Think what? If I then went ahead and insisted, it doesn't matter what. Every time you think. Just listen. Every time you think. It doesn't matter what. Every time you think, you have put yourself back to sleep. You have put yourself at the minimal level of consciousness. Every time you think. If that is a valid telling, which it is, if that is a valid description, and you were an ordinary person, even an ordinary would-be mystic, at first you'd be well within your rights, just momentarily, and after that, slap yourself. But to think, wait a minute, if that's true, I'm more depressed now than I was before I ever heard of you. I am back now being as depressed and upset as I was when I was 12 or 13 and found out that being bar mitzvahed and have part of my manhood cut off didn't wake me up. Well, yeah, it made my eyes get big momentarily, but... If you took it at face value at first, no, you could be a quite sincere seeker of the truth and the mysteries. And if I said, I am telling you right now, every time you think, you have put yourself back in the lowest possible level of consciousness. You've put yourself back to sleep. And you go, no, think what? Tell me. And I say, anything. Now at first, if that is a valid telling, which it is, if that is a valid description, which it is, at first you would be well within your rights, seriously, to go, good God, will somebody give me a pistol? Give me some hemlock. But think about it another way. Think about it another way. It is delightful. Do you understand that once you can see that for yourself, contrary to being a sad occasion, that is, that every time you think, you put yourself back right where you started, you have now got the world's historical reality of mystical work in your pocket, figuratively speaking. It's right here. Everything you need, which I would strongly suggest to you is where the idea so historically and so widespread has come from about some form of self-flagellation, whether physically or otherwise. That is, of people going, well, it's good for you to have pains in life. I mean, it's good for you. Your mother dies, your father dies, and somebody falls apart. A would-be mystic, somebody who has always been a good Christian or Jew or been religious in some way, and then something happens, their mother suddenly dies or their child dies, just in a horrible accident. The old idea of Job, of cursing life, like I've always been a good person. And then there's always somebody around. It can be just out of a Reader's Digest magazine, it could be your family, it could be a guy at a funeral home. Just the guy that owns it has been around enough to pat you on the back and will say something like, well, you know, a real person, I understand you're religious. Yes, I am, my whole family. Would you understand when things like this, these tragedies happen, it can actually be good. It can strengthen one's spirit, strengthen one's faith, and to cling to God and whoever you believe in. That's a very old story. It works as well as anything else. It works the same way. Well, it works. No, you know how it works in life. It is just one of the things that is simply another belief, is another attempt. But I'm pointing out to you that is always a poor, a simplistic reflection of what I'm telling you. It's not that hardships are good for you. Who wants hardships in a sense? But life is good for you if you're trying to get somewhere, because what else have you got to work with? And people start out thinking, no, I want something greater to work with. I want a mystic somewhere in a cave. I want some secret information. The biggest secret in the world is the loudest secret in the universe. It's the voice of life. It's so loud, it's so big, people go, well, where is it? And they want to narrow the focus down and find a mystic somewhere, find a secret school. The secret school's everywhere. It's not a figure of speech. I refer you back to my new story. In a casual moment one day, Buddha turned and said to a kid that had been hanging around for a while, he said, if anybody ever tells you that this is not a forever, ongoing struggle, they lying to you. But you know Buddha wouldn't say something sad. He didn't have a tear in his eye. He didn't choke. He simply telling the kid had been hanging around a long time, it said, or a while. So he assumed the kid might be able to hear something. Every time you think, you put yourself back right where you started. Every time you think, there are no conditions, there are no stipulations. That's the difference between thinking and seamless consciousness. It is not a sad occasion once you see it. At least, well, you begin to save money if nothing else. For any of you who still buy mystical books, they save you all kinds of dreams of thinking, well, maybe someday, you know, it's fun coming here, but maybe someday I will be able to arrange and save my money and move to India or so-and-so. Not once you see this, because you realize if anybody's in India or somewhere else says, yes, come over here and see us, they're thinking. Even if at times they are a little more lucid, and at times if they ever were enlightened, they're not right then, or they wouldn't say, come here. That's why I had the guy say that he'd finally figured out, after pursuing all these mystical ways and teachers, and always ultimately became unsatisfying, and then one day it suddenly struck him that the way you could actually tell somebody that was more awake was if they'd agreed to talk to you about it, they would want some absolutely unreasonable, unpayable sum of money. They would just tell you, yes, that's it. Because they'd realize the price. That was allegory and not allegory. Because the price, they would want something unpayable. Literally. And if they said, all right, I'll talk to you, I'll tell you for $1 million. And you went and got $1 million and come back, he'd go, oh, I forgot to tell you there's some excise, some surcharges. And he'd keep on. I could turn this into sound like a on-the-spot Zen story. The only way that you would ever benefit from having met such a guy is you kept coming up with the money, and he kept saying no, and he kept raising it to the point that you'd look at him, and maybe it's up to $10 million, and some way you had access to it, and you took a look at him, and you suddenly realized he'd never had over $1,000. That this would be more anyway, and you can't believe it. Are you telling me that you actually know the secret, and now I'm up to $10 million? You went from $1 million. I mean, you've been playing around, jerking me around here for the last week. And now you're up to $10 million, I got right here, and you're still telling me, now it's 11? You're telling me that, wait a minute. There's a chance for enlightenment, if this was a regular Zen story. That suddenly, if I was making a Zen story, is the guy, you, with the $10 million would go, you mean